If you've ever rebuilt your life one quiet win at a time, only to have family rip the foundation out from under you, you'll understand what I'm about to say. I was 33, a single dad, finally breathing again after years of drowning. I'd just closed on a modest 3-bedroom in Southside Richmond. Not much, but it had a fenced backyard for my son Miles and a kitchen with real light. The kind of light that makes you believe things might be okay. After the divorce, I didn't think I'd get here. There were nights I slept in my car, mornings I dropped Miles off at school with nothing but a granola bar and a fake smile. I had panic attacks in grocery store parking lots, got denied loans more times than I can count, and worked myself ragged bouncing between lesson plans and Uber shifts just to pay rent. But I held it together for him. Always for him. I saved every tax return, every side hustle dollar. When the approval letter came from the bank, I cried harder than I did the day my ex left. This house was proof. I was still standing. So I decided to celebrate it the only way I knew how, with food, music, and the people who were supposed to matter. A Sunday dinner. My first time hosting since before everything fell apart. I cleaned every inch of that house. Scrubbed the baseboards, ironed cloth napkins I didn't even know I owned, made a playlist with Miles that spanned Luther, Lauryn Hill, Erykah Badu, and a little bit of Stevie Wonder. And the food? I went full Southern soul on M. Slow-roasted brisket marinated for 2 days. Mac and cheese with smoked Gouda. Collard greens with turkey necks. Sweet cornbread with jalapenos. I even made banana pudding from scratch, just like my grandmother used to. It wasn't just a meal. It was an offering. An olive branch. A declaration that I was no longer broken. I thought if I made the space feel like home, they'd see that I was whole again. Miles helped me light candles. He folded the napkins. I swear he was more excited than I was. He kept asking me, "Is Grandma really coming? And Auntie Jazz?" I told him yes. With a smile I prayed would still be there by dessert. Guests started arriving around 3 p.m. My mom was first, flowers in hand, a fake smile stitched across her face. She hugged Miles, looked around the place, and said, "You really cleaned up nice." Then my sister Jazz showed up with her new boyfriend, Leon. She gave me a once-over, raised an eyebrow, and said, "Wow, this is cute." Every room filled with voices and smells and stories. I passed around glasses of sweet tea, cracked open the wine I splurged on from a black-owned vineyard out in Charlottesville. My uncle Darius launched into his usual rants about politics. My cousin Darla posted a selfie with the caption, "Family love 2 hearts #blessed." And my niece tried to DJ the playlist on her phone before I shut that down real quick. It was loud, messy, and for a moment, it felt like maybe, just maybe, this could be the turning point. The moment they'd look at me and see not the man who messed up, but the one who rose back up. But even then, there was something in the air I couldn't quite name. A kind of tightness. Like everyone was walking on a script they hadn't shared with me. Like I was the only one who hadn't gotten the email. I caught my mom whispering with Jazz by the sink. Leon kept glancing at his watch. Uncle Darius asked if I had plans beyond teaching, whatever that meant. Even Miles noticed. "Why does everyone seem weird?" He whispered while scooping more mac and cheese. I laughed it off, told him they were just being grown-ups. But deep down, my gut had already started to hum. You know that feeling you get when the storm's about to hit, but the sky's still clear? I didn't know it yet, but this wasn't just a dinner. It was a setup, and the menu had already been decided me. The first real crack came just as dessert hit the table. Banana pudding sat cold in the fridge, but my family? They had other plans. My mom stood up, slow, deliberate, like she was about to make a toast. I remember drying my hands with a towel from the sink, still beaming from how Miles had bragged to everyone that his dad made the brisket from scratch. His eyes were shining, his belly full. I felt proud. I felt enough. Then Mom cleared her throat. "I just want to say," she started, voice soft. "This was lovely, Reese." "Really?" A few nods followed. My sister raised her glass like she was in a Hallmark movie. Then Mom reached into her tote bag and pulled out a manila folder. My stomach dropped. Not because I knew what was in it, but because I didn't. She opened the folder like it was a will reading. Papers clipped, printed, color-coded tabs. She handed the first page to my sister, Jazz. Jazz stood like it was rehearsed. "We've been having some conversations as a family," she began. "And we wanted to share a little support plan we put together for you." "Support plan?" I blinked. She flipped the paper and started reading aloud. "Number 1. Consider taking a leave of absence from teaching to focus on mental health recovery. Number 2. Seek a new therapist, preferably male and trauma-informed. Number 3. Limit social media, especially posts about single fatherhood. I raised my hand. Wait, what the hell is this? But she kept going. Number 4. Reallocate finances. There's concern about how much you're spending on the house versus Miles' long-term needs. Number 5. Weekly check-ins with a family-appointed advisor. Uncle Darius has volunteered. I scanned the room. My cousin Darla couldn't meet my eye. Uncle Darius crossed his arms, like he was waiting for applause. Even my mom, she didn't flinch. They'd planned this. Not the day before. Not that morning. This had layers. Printing. Highlighting. Assignments. Like I was a failed project they were reviving. What is this really about? I asked, voice flat. My mom finally spoke. Reese, honey, we're worried about you. About Miles. You've been through a lot. And this, she gestured around the room. This isn't normal. Hosting a whole dinner like everything's fine. Like nothing ever happened. I've been healing, I said, jaw tight. I got custody. I bought this house. I'm doing better. No, Jazz said. You're hiding. Behind food, behind TikTok posts, behind this fantasy of being okay. But you're not. Then came the final blow. Mom pulled out a trifold brochure and slid it across the table toward me. A place called Birchwood Retreat Center. Photos of trees, meditation circles, a tagline that read, "Reclaim your wholeness." I stared at it. My son stared at me. They brought a rehab brochure to my dinner table. My hands were shaking, but I wasn't crying. Not yet. I looked down the table and realized something bone deep and sharp. This wasn't concern. This was control wrapped in guilt. This was performance. This was everyone playing the part of savior, while I was cast as the wounded man too foolish to fix himself. I invited y'all here to celebrate, I said, voice low. You invited us into a performance, Uncle Darius replied. And we're calling cut. The silence that followed was louder than anything Jazz read aloud. Miles reached under the table and squeezed my hand. That was it. I stood, thanked everyone for coming, told them I'd packed dessert to go. Mom tried to object, but I raised my palm. We're done. Then I did what no one expected. I started clearing the table, one plate at a time. Quiet. Measured. Jazz sputtered something about how I was being reactive. I didn't respond. I wrapped banana pudding, handed it to Leon without looking at him, gave Darla a container of brisket. Uncle Darius got nothing. I wiped down the table, nodding toward the door. It's been real. They trickled out. Some hugged Miles goodbye. No one hugged me. When the door closed behind the last one, I locked it, bolted it, slid down the wood frame, and finally let my back rest against it. Miles crawled into my lap. No words, just his head on my shoulder. I whispered, "I'm sorry you had to see that." He said, "I'm glad I did." I didn't sleep that night, but I didn't cry either. Instead, I opened my phone, recorded a voice memo. Tonight, I began, my family brought a wellness brochure to my dinner table. Said I was broken, said I was lost. But what they didn't know was, I've never been clearer. I posted it on TikTok at 2:13 a.m. I figured maybe 30 people would see it. I had no idea the world was about to answer back. By sunrise, my post had 17,000 views. By noon, it had over 600,000. And by the time I got home from picking up Miles from school, people had started tagging me in duets, reposts, and comments that lit my phone up like a pinball machine. You're not broken. You're healing. And that scares them. We need more dads like you. Keep speaking. They staged an ambush, and you made it a movement. I hadn't even shown my face in the video. Just my voice. Just a quiet kitchen, a flickering candle, and a sentence that cut through the noise. They called it help, but it was a funeral. For the version of me they wanted to keep buried. I thought maybe I'd regret posting it. Thought maybe I'd panic when my mom or sister saw it. But I didn't. Because something had cracked open. Something honest. Something real. They wanted to curate my pain. I just made it public. By Monday, I had over 50,000 new followers. A woman from Baltimore stitched my video with her own story of a postpartum intervention where her family called her too dramatic for crying at the table. A teacher from Chicago messaged me about getting written up for calling out after a panic attack. I wasn't alone, and neither were they. But the thrill turned sharp real quick. That night, I got a call from Jazz. I didn't answer. Then a text. "So this is how you're dealing with it? Broadcasting us like villains?" Real classy, Reese. Then from Mom. You're better than this. Or maybe we were wrong. Wrong? They weren't just doubling down, they were watching. That night, I got paranoid. Turned my phone on Do Not Disturb. Started second-guessing whether I'd gone too far. But then Miles walked in, holding my phone like it was sacred. "Dad?" he said. Someone commented, "Your son's lucky. You're the kind of father I prayed for." I took the phone. Read it. Sat with it. No, I wasn't wrong. I was seen. Still, the drama didn't stop there. Wednesday, I found out from my cousin Leah that Jazz had shared her own version of events in a Facebook post. Long, flowery, full of phrases like, "We love Reese deeply. He's struggling and rejecting help." Social media is a dangerous place for unresolved trauma. She even attached a photo from the dinner. One of me plating brisket, smiling like a damn fool, while they plotted my emotional dissection behind my back. The caption? "Sometimes love looks like tough conversations." Nah. Sometimes love looks like showing up without paperwork. I didn't respond publicly. I didn't need to. Because the next day, something wild happened. A local reporter, Angela from RVA Stories, DM'd me asking if I'd talk about the emotional burden placed on Black fathers and family systems. She said she'd seen my video. Said it shook her. I told her, "I'm not an expert. I'm just tired." She replied, "That's exactly why people will listen." We scheduled a Zoom. I set up my living room, dim lighting, books stacked behind me like I'd seen in interviews. I was nervous. Miles wore his headphones in the other room, but he kept peeking in like it was a red carpet event. Angela was gentle but real. "What would you say," she asked, "to someone who says, your family was just trying to help?" I paused. Then I said, "Help isn't a script. It's not a surprise party with bullet points. Help starts with a question." And nobody at that table asked me a damn thing. The clip aired 2 nights later. The comment section exploded. I got invited on a podcast. Then 2. Then a panel. Strangers sent gift cards. Other dads sent emails that made me cry in the quiet of my car before class. I wasn't trying to become a spokesperson, but something was happening. Something real. And that's when the final twist dropped. Jazz showed up at my front door. No text. No warning. Just a knock on a rainy Friday night. I opened it, heart pounding, already tired. She was holding a box. Thought I'd return some of Miles' toys from Mom's. I took it, silent. Then she said, "Also, I saw the interview. Guess you're famous now." I shrugged. "Didn't do it for that." "I know," she said, "but it's still weird seeing our family stuff out there like that." I didn't reply. She shifted. "Look, I know you think we ambushed you, but we were just scared. You shut down after Jess left. After the divorce. After everything. We didn't know how to reach you. You didn't try," I said. "You diagnosed me. You managed me. Like a problem." She looked down. Then, "You really think you're better off without us?" I didn't answer right away, because that's not a yes or no question. It's an entire storm of truth. But eventually, I said, "I think I'm better when I stop begging for a kind of love you never offered." And then I closed the door. No shouting. No drama. Just the sound of rain and the soft click of a boundary locking into place. I didn't expect the email from the PDA. Subject line, "We saw your story. Let's talk." I opened it slowly, bracing for judgment. Instead, it was from Ms. Cortez, the vice president of our district's parent committee. She said they were discussing mental health workshops for teachers and staff, and she asked if I'd be willing to speak, not just as an educator, but as a father, a survivor, a voice. I read the email 3 times. I'd been dismissed, picked apart, interrogated by my own blood at a table I paid for. And now strangers were saying, "Teach us." I replied yes. I didn't know what I was doing, but I was done waiting for permission. That weekend, I started sketching something bigger. I sat at my kitchen table with a notebook and wrote the name at the top of the page. Real Fathers. Real Talk. I wanted to build something. A space. A platform. A project where Black dads like me could talk about parenting, grief, masculinity, failure, without being reduced to statistics or stereotypes. I didn't want to perform resilience. I wanted to humanize it. The first idea was simple, a weekly live stream. Just 30 minutes on Sundays. Me, sharing thoughts, inviting other dads, reading messages. No fancy studio. Just my living room, a laptop, and truth. But fear crept in fast. What if no one showed up? What if people said I was doing too much? What if Jazz was right, and I really was broadcasting trauma for sympathy? But that fear was familiar. That fear was the same one that told me to stay silent during the dinner. And silence hadn't protected me then. So I posted the announcement on TikTok. If you're a single parent, a tired teacher, or just someone trying to do better, join me Sunday night. Bring tea. Bring truth. No judgment here. I hit upload and closed the app. I didn't look at numbers. Didn't track comments. I just cleaned the living room, helped Miles with his homework, and made lemon chicken for dinner. That night, I opened my laptop, went live, and saw 16 people watching. 16. That was more than enough. I took a breath and started talking. I told them about the brisket, about the playlist, about how I thought love looked like perfection, but learned it looked more like boundaries. I talked about therapy, about shame, about the way people whisper mental health like it's contagious. And when I finished, there were 87 people watching. The next week, 340, then 900. It didn't stop there, but neither did the resistance. At school, one of the other teachers, Mr. Holt, made a comment in the lounge. Didn't realize you were an influencer now. He said it with a smirk. The way people say, bless your heart, but means stay in your lane. I just nodded. Didn't feed the fire. But later that day, a student named Komari stayed after class. He looked nervous. Then he said, my dad watched your video. The one about crying in the car before school. He said it made him feel seen. I didn't say anything for a second. Then I smiled and said, tell him I said thank you. Because that's the point. Not likes. Not followers. Connection. That night, I started working on something bigger. A website. A resource list. Hotline numbers. Book recommendations. A donation button for school counselors needing supplies. A section called Letters to Our Kids, where dads could submit messages anonymously. Things they wanted to say, but couldn't yet say out loud. I called the whole thing Real Fathers. Real Talk. And I bought the domain with my own money. No sponsors. No corporate help. Just me and a mission. But of course, just when the momentum felt good, the past knocked again. Mom called. I didn't answer. Then she left a voicemail. Her voice cracked, unsure. Reese, I saw your live stream. I didn't know you were hurting that deep. I didn't realize. Call me, okay? Then Jazz sent another message. Okay, maybe we were wrong. Just don't shut us out completely. It would have been easy to respond. But easy hadn't gotten me here. So I did what I do now. I lit a candle, opened my laptop, and let the real story speak. I told my Sunday livestream audience. Forgiveness doesn't always mean reunion. Sometimes it just means not carrying the weight anymore. They filled the comments with hearts, with stories, with prayers. And that's when the idea hit me. What if I launched a nonprofit? Not just live streams and blogs, but real grants, real mental health partnerships, real workshops for single dads and burned out teachers. I'd already built the foundation. Now it was time to build the house. I filed for 501c3 status 2 weeks later. My mission? Simple. To rewrite the narrative for single fathers. To turn pain into power. And to remind men like me, we don't need to audition for love we already deserve. But don't get it twisted. The next storm came faster than I expected. And it wore a familiar face. The first time I saw her name again was on a donation receipt. Jasmine Holloway. $50. No message. I stared at the screen, my hand frozen over the mouse. It was like seeing handwriting in a dream, familiar, but wrong. Why now? I hadn't spoken to my sister since the intervention dinner. Not a call, not a text. She didn't come to Miles's birthday. Didn't check in when our district had that teacher scare. Nothing. And now, suddenly a donation? I clicked on her profile, just to check. Her bio read, healing is messy, trying my best. Sparkles. Typical Jazz. Pretty on the outside, performative beneath. I let it go. Didn't respond. But 2 days later, she showed up at my school. Not during off hours. Not quietly. She walked right into the front office at 3:15 p.m. when kids were swarming the halls. The secretary buzzed into my classroom. Mr. Holloway, your sister's here. She says it's urgent. I could feel every kid's eye snap to me. I walked out into the hallway, and there she was, standing under the buzzed fluorescent light like some scene from a courtroom drama. Can we talk? She asked. I didn't answer, just nodded toward the parking lot. We sat in her car. Engine off. Air heavy. She started with small talk. Asked how Miles was doing. How the school year was going. How my little house was holding up. I let her run out of steam before saying anything. Then I asked, what do you really want? She took a breath and finally said it. You're not the only one who's hurting, Reese. And then she dropped it, the real reason she came. Mom's been diagnosed. Early onset Alzheimer's. I didn't move. Didn't blink. The word hit like a snowball with a rock inside. Cold, but cruel. She asked about you yesterday, Jazz continued, voice soft. She keeps forgetting the dinner happened. Keeps asking why you haven't called. I swallowed hard. My chest tightened. I hated that this news still cracked something open. I asked, why didn't anyone tell me? Jazz looked down at her hands. Because you blocked us. Fair. But still, they held an ambush in my house, then decided I didn't deserve updates about our mother's mind unraveling. She leaned in. I think you should come see her. Soon. I said nothing. Because what do you do when the same people who crushed your heart come asking for grace? Jazz left that afternoon. No hugs. No promises. Just a final sentence tossed into the air. Don't let your pride cost you another goodbye. I didn't sleep much that night. Miles noticed. At breakfast, he asked, you okay, Dad? I lied. Just tired. But something shifted after that. My next live stream drew over 5,000 viewers. I talked about grief that doesn't come from death, but from disconnection. From people still living, but no longer reachable. And then a producer messaged me. A local NBC affiliate. They'd seen the nonprofit, the live stream, the blog. They wanted to do a segment. Local teacher turns grief into action. I said yes. We filmed in my classroom. They captured my Sunday setup. I even introduced Miles on camera. He wore his favorite hoodie and asked if he could wave. He did. The segment aired 3 days later. By Monday morning, my inbox had over 700 messages. Dads from Chicago, Houston, Atlanta. A school principal from Baltimore offered to host a live panel. And buried in the middle, one message stopped me cold. Subject, important regarding Miles. It was from Tanya, Miles's mother. We hadn't spoken in 4 years. Not since the custody court gave me primary rights. Her email was short. I saw the piece on NBC. I want to reconnect with my son. I think it's time. That's it. No apology. No explanation. Just a request for re-entry. And it threw everything into chaos. Because the one thing I protected above all, through my own trauma, through financial strain, through betrayal, was my boy. And now, the woman who left him behind wanted to walk back in like nothing happened. I didn't reply right away. I needed to think. I talked to my lawyer. Talked to a therapist. Talked to myself. Then one evening, while I was chopping onions for dinner, Miles said, Mom messaged me on Roblox. I dropped the knife. What? She said she saw me on TV and missed me. Said she wants to hang out. I sat down hard. My hands were shaking. She bypassed me completely. Went straight to a child. I felt rage rise, fast and white hot. I reported the message. I locked his account. I wrote Tanya an email longer than her original note, but didn't hit send. Not yet. Because just then, my phone buzzed again. A voicemail from Mom. Only this time, she didn't say my name. She was rambling. Confused. Thought I was Uncle Daryl. Did Reese bring the candles? She asked. He always liked candles. It broke me. Not because she forgot, but because in her confusion, she still remembered something soft about me. I sat in the dark that night with my head in my hands. Jazz was right. Pride could cost me another goodbye, but so could opening old doors. The next week felt like I was balancing 2 grenades, both with the pins halfway out. On one hand, there was Tanya, my ex. The woman who ghosted our son at 4 years old, missed 3 birthdays, and texted twice in 4 years, both times asking for money. Now, after seeing me on TV, she wanted reconnection. On the other, there was my mom, slipping fast into early onset Alzheimer's. She might not know my name next month, might not remember my son's face next week. And Jazz wanted me to visit, to give her peace. But what about my peace? What about the version of me they broke? What about the folder at the dinner table? What about my son crying in my arms the night Tanya left and never came back? These weren't just people. They were chapters I'd spent years trying to close. But life doesn't let you close chapters when the characters keep showing up with their own pens. I kept moving. Teaching, grading, building the nonprofit's next event. We were planning a pop-up for single fathers at a local rec center. Mental health counselors. Free groceries. A barbershop corner. Everything I wished existed for me 5 years ago. But one night, after Miles went asleep, I got up and stood by the front door for no reason. Just stood there, holding the doorknob, staring out. I realized then, I'd built a new life, but I hadn't allowed myself to feel it. Not really. I was surviving with style, but still flinching from old shadows. The next morning, I did something dangerous. I wrote back to Tanya. Just one sentence. You want to reconnect? Come to therapy with us first. No solo visits. No surprises. I hit send. No response for 3 days. Then suddenly, agreed. Name the place. I didn't tell Miles yet. I needed backup first. I called DeAndre, a close friend who'd been through custody hell himself. He came over with wings and cornbread and sat with me at the table like it was a war council. You sure you want her back in his head, man? He asked. I wasn't. But I also knew what it felt like to be erased, and I'd be damned if I let anyone else make Miles feel that. We found a black male therapist. Neutral ground. First session, Miles just stared at his shoes. Tanya cried the whole time. Said she missed him every day. Said she didn't know how to come back. Miles looked at her and said, "Why didn't you try?" That hit her harder than anything I could have said. But still, I didn't trust tears. Tears don't rebuild years. 2 more sessions. She showed up on time. Didn't interrupt. Didn't push. Still, I kept one hand on the exit plan. Meanwhile, my inbox was exploding again. The TikTok about the intervention dinner had passed 1.8 million views. People were making duets, sharing their own ambush stories. Teachers, nurses, dads, queer kids, estranged siblings. A publisher reached out, asked if I considered a memoir. I hadn't, but now I was. And then came the unexpected twist. I got a call from a national mental health nonprofit. They'd seen my videos. They were organizing a panel tour, 5 cities, 6 weeks, featuring educators, advocates, and therapists. They wanted me. All expenses paid. Honorarium. And one more ask. Would your mother be willing to appear on video? We'd love to show the power of healing in families. I laughed out loud. Healing? They didn't know she once handed me a brochure for a wellness center like it was a birthday card. But they didn't know the other side, either. The day I finally visited her, Jazz was there. So was Uncle Rodney. The house smelled like Vicks and lemon oil, my childhood memories crawling out of every corner. Mom looked smaller than I remembered. She lit up when I walked in. Reese, you brought the candles, right? It gutted me. She thought I was prepping another dinner. But then she took my hand, looked at me, really looked, and whispered, I messed that night up, didn't I? She remembered, just for a flicker, but it was there. I nodded, eyes burning. Yeah, Mom, you did. And then I kissed her forehead. That night, I didn't post anything. No photos, no videos, just silence. Because not every moment needs an audience. But a week later, I agreed to the panel tour. Told them no to the video request about my mom, but yes to the story of what came after. Then, on the eve of my first flight to Atlanta, a package arrived. No return label. Inside was a card that read, "To my favorite disappointment, you always rise anyway." It was from Jazz. Inside the box, a candle, labeled Fresh Starts. I sat down in the dark, lit the wick, and let the silence wrap around me like armor. The next morning, I zipped my bag, kissed Miles on the head, and walked out the front door, not as a survivor, but as a man finally living without apology. Atlanta was hot, not just the temperature, but the energy. When I walked into the auditorium for the first night of the panel tour, my palms were sweating. The room could seat 300. I counted about 120 folding chairs set up, ringed with cameras and softbox lights. This wasn't a podcast episode. This was real. I was standing backstage, mic clipped to my collar, watching a woman on stage speak about losing her son to suicide after years of being misunderstood by her family. Her voice cracked. The room was dead silent. Not a single cough, not a single phone buzz. I wasn't sure I belonged here. Then they called my name. And now, joining us from Richmond, Virginia, a teacher, a single father, a voice for those who never get to speak. Please welcome Reese Sanders. Applause. Warm, respectful, but I heard it through a filter like I was underwater. I walked out, sat down on stage, and locked eyes with a man in the front row who looked like he hadn't blinked since I stepped out. When the moderator asked me to share what happened that night, the Sunday dinner turned intervention, I told the truth. I described the brisket, the playlist, the handmade name cards, the folder. I realized, I said slowly, they weren't concerned. They were uncomfortable. There's a difference. The room nodded. Then I dropped this. They didn't ask me how I was surviving. But the truth is, I wasn't. I was just making it look beautiful while I drowned. You could feel the breath catch across the audience. When I finished, people stood. But that wasn't the twist. That came 2 panels later when we were invited to stay for a Q&A. A woman raised her hand, said her name was Marlena from DC. Reese, I'm Jazz's friend. She told me you were speaking tonight. She couldn't make it, but I promised I'd ask this on her behalf. I blinked. Jazz. She didn't say anything about this. Do you believe families who hurt you, unintentionally or not, deserve a second chance if they show they're learning? The room went still. I knew everyone was waiting to hear something noble, clean, forgiving, but I didn't give them that. I gave them honesty. I think, I said slowly, that healing is not the same as reunion. Sometimes the healthiest thing you can do is love someone from a distance, even forever. My peace doesn't require their permission. Some clapped. Others just nodded. Marlena wiped her cheek. That night, after the panel, someone knocked on my hotel door. It was the tour coordinator. She handed me a phone. Hey, someone called the event hotline asking for you. Said it's urgent. I didn't know if. It was Tanya. I almost didn't answer. But I did. Reese, she said, breath tight. I'm at the ER. Miles is okay, just a deep cut from the playground. But I panicked. I'm sorry. I didn't know who else. I didn't let her finish. I threw on clothes and ran downstairs, booked the earliest flight home. Because no matter how far I flew, being a dad came first. Hours later, I was at Miles's bedside. He smiled through the bandage on his eyebrow. I was climbing the monkey bars like Spider-Man, he said. I slipped on purpose to test my reflexes. I laughed, then cried, then laughed again. Tanya stood nearby, quiet, respectful. We didn't argue, didn't discuss the past. She knew this wasn't about her anymore. Later, back home, Miles asked, Are you going back to those stages? I paused. Yeah, buddy. Just not today. He nodded. Good. I like it when you're here. That night, after tucking him in, I found an email waiting from the panel tour team. We're heading to Chicago next. Your seat is still open. But underneath it was a comment from TikTok on an old video I posted weeks ago, the one about the dinner. It read, You didn't just tell your story. You gave people like me permission to survive. That hit me hard, because I realized this wasn't just about closure anymore, or performance, or even therapy. It was legacy. So I replied to the panel tour. Count me in for Chicago. And then I texted Jazz. Thank you for sending Marlena. That question, that was the realest moment of the night. She wrote back one sentence. Just trying to show I'm still learning. That's all I needed. I lit another candle, watched the flames sway like a metronome. And in that quiet, I realized my life wasn't a song waiting for approval. It was already a full track. Rough vocals, strong chorus, clean fade out. And now it was ready for release.